Welcome, everyone. My name is Allison Merker-Garner, and this video explores the ways that Primal Alexander can be used in how we take care of ourselves, how we can play better, and how we can interact with others with compassion and connection. So, Primal Alexander is an approach to Alexander technique developed by Mio Morales that is a no-touch approach to the method. So FM Alexander had his own method that he developed back in the early part of the 20th century that improved use and function. He adjusted the body and the posture, where the head sits on the neck, and focused on ways to create the non-interference that created movement that was not based on habit, but was based on ease of use. So his method is very successful with performers of all kinds who want to improve their well-being in what moving they must do: dancers, musicians, actors. And what Mio Morales did is he created this method in a form where it can be done online. So there's not any touch involved. So most of his work involves thinking, how you use your thinking, how you use your mind, and how that can create a good experience or an easy experience, a better experience in your functioning and in your use. So Mio Morales's approach does not have any certification or licensure that's attached to it. He encourages his students to use his ideas and his practices, what he calls etudes, to improve people's lives. So that could be coaching clients, that could be creatives of all kinds that want to improve their use and function. It can be students. You may be a teacher and would want to improve your students' functioning in playing an instrument. So it is a very useful approach. A lot of the things that we hear about today, like somatic experiencing and Feldenkrais methods and things of that nature, grew out of the work that Alexander did. He didn't have the science available to him that, say, Moshe Feldenkrais had, or Peter Levine of somatic experiencing had available. He went based on experimentation and observation, where he placed his attention. But now we have science to back it up. And so the practices that I'm going to show you today are practices that come out of Mio Morales's work and are intended to improve use and function. I will say, as a somatically trained therapist, that these practices use the brain, use the mind, use your thinking in a different way than a lot of the somatic practices that we do. And I've done some videos on somatic resourcing and orienting and grounding. These are all things to give you the sense of safety, the sense of resourcefulness and stability that you need to feel okay in the world and okay in your body. That's a different thing than what we're about to do with Alexander technique. practices. Those are designed to not create safety, though it's not against safety, but they're designed to allow your body to do naturally what it can do without you interfering with it, or becoming at least aware of when you are interfering with it and it's changing the direction of your experience toward ease or away from ease. So one of the phrases you will hear in Primal Alexander is constructive thinking. And constructive thinking is a way of accessing the kind of thinking that improves your function. It has a stimulus, usually a number. And if we're doing certain exercises, the number is 0, and that will be your stimulus to do your constructive thinking. And for the purposes of this exercise, we're just going to say above. That's your constructive thought. You're going to say above with a question mark. And you don't have to think it per se. You don't have to imagine it or place your entire awareness up here. But to say above does create a response, a neural response that's unconscious, but is very powerful to your well-being. And the more you practice this, the more it can do that work for you. Now, what is the experience when we say above? Explore that for a minute. If you said something else, or you did one of the somatic grounding exercises and imagined roots growing out of the bottoms of your feet down into the earth, that's grounding, isn't that? That's a different experience. When we say above, do you feel a different way? Do you experience that in your body in a way that is heavy, light, easy? What is that? Identify that for you. There's not a right answer. It's just for your own information above. And we're going to do a few exercises that Mio refers to as etudes. These etudes practice your constructive thinking in doing either very little activity or using some activity, some movement with it. And the idea is you're practicing integrating your constructive thinking, your ease, your movement toward ease as you function physically. So let's take the cycle. The cycle I have on a separate video under the live section of my YouTube videos, but we'll go through it here with one hand. There are 2 hands that we do the cycle with. So you're going to get half of it, but it gives you an idea of how it works and why it works. So the cycle uses constructive thinking above, and the stimulus is a number. So we will take every finger in the left hand this time. And as we take a finger, right now I'm on the thumb, we hold it and we count. I count. Every time you hear a number, say to yourself above, above, 1, above, 2, above, 3, above, 4, above, moving from the thumb to the index finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving to the middle finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ring finger. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pinky. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we were doing a complete cycle, we would do this hand as well, one finger at a time. So ask yourself, is your experience different right now than it was before we started the cycle? And if so, in what way? How would you describe it? Constructive thinking, since it is related to function and use, is very useful in our playing if we want to get out of our feelings, out of our sensations. If we want to get out of that and feel more out of that confined sense of must control, but more openness, more freedom, then we can practice using our constructive thinking in our practice and in our playing. And what Mio Morales does, and so does Jennifer Roy Francoli, is integrate this process through what they call etudes. Mio's etudes, there's a whole bunch of them that practice different kinds of using constructive thinking in the mind while doing movement. So what is that doing? Is making our thinking more flexible, isn't it? And it's integrating that way of being into what we do. So those etudes are done without the instrument. They're done just with the body. And over time, once you've gotten that practice in, you can start integrating it with holding the instrument, getting into your posture with your instrument, playing one note on your instrument, even just thinking and preparing to play. We integrate the constructive thinking into that. How I use it in the things that I do with my clients, with my students, with myself, is I use a combination of that and somatic, because I think that we do need to know what's going on with ourselves and the feelings and the emotions and the sensations. We need to be aware of those things to be able to allow them to speak and release. First, to be able to choose if they're useful to us or not. Like if I were nervous about playing on stage, I can't really ignore that, can I? Because I'm nervous and I've got certain bodily sensations that are related to those nerves. My bow might bounce, or I might be really shaky, or my breathing is irregular. I may be sweating profusely. There are a number of somatic responses that can come up when we're nervous, right? So those are things that we deal with. They're not something we can just suppress and expect to have go away. And a lot of times, what we do as musicians is we disconnect, we disassociate from ourselves to be able to function. Think about it. If you play a performance and you're on automatic pilot, you may be nervous, but you've practiced so much that you know your piece, but are you really present? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're just getting through it. And maybe you're doing quite a good job of playing through it. But are you able to be present in that? Constructive thinking is a way of having that presence and still having the ease and the function, right? But I believe that it has to work also with the acknowledgement that the feelings and the emotions and the sensations are there. They're telling you that you're feeling nervous. And that's just what it is. So suppressing that, just going above that, can ease or mitigate the reactions that you're having or the feelings you're having, but they don't reverse them. They don't neutralize them. They're not training your neural system to be able to actually be present and enjoy and be interactive in this experience. And that's what we really want as performing artists. We want to be able to fully access our emotional range, our feeling range, and do it in a way where it doesn't impair our functioning. So I will use some of these etudes and integrate those into playing to get the distance, get that disidentification going from what's happening in here, but only after we've acknowledged it and we've done the exercises to shift it to something more healthful. So it's twofold. So I say that because the practices I'm going to show you next that come from Alexander are things that are part of the equation. They're not the whole equation to overcoming these neurologically based reactions that we have, like performance anxiety. So the next one I want to show you is called MJ. And MJ is just pulling your hands up from the thighs here and opening and closing. And I did that with a whole lot of interference, a lot of interference. I was conscious of showing you this, and showing you this. And you get so practiced at using your constructive thinking that you know when you're not using it. And you become aware of that, and you can immediately reverse that direction toward ease. So the way it would work is I would give you a 0 and then a movement, and a 0 and a movement, and a 0 and a movement. And then we'll do it with a 0 as we move, a 0 as we move, and a 0 as we move. What we're doing over here is really relevant. Doesn't really matter. It's how you're integrating the thinking into what you're doing. And it's about functioning, right? It's easing your use. So let's try it. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Now let's do 0 is your above And we're going to do above at every 0 as the movement begins. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So, how is that different? There's the point right before we move where we want to be at ease. There's a point as we move that we want to retain that ease. Do we? Usually not. But that's the goal. That's how we would like it to move, is in the direction of more ease. And then as we're into the etude, our ease will increase or decrease. It will go one direction or another, right? And so as we're practicing recognizing and becoming aware of what's going on, we become more sensitized in being able to move in that direction more readily and sustain it for longer, right? So one other exercise that I want to show you that comes from Alexander technique is 17 steps. And this one's a little different in that we are working with titration. That's a somatic word. And titration means that we're not titrating, we're pendulating. That's another somatic word, because we're going back and forth between what's activating, what's not activating. Less ease, more ease. We're playing with that a little bit, right? And by doing that pendulation, we may be actually becoming less and less activated as we go. We may be moving more and more toward ease and neutralizing that activation. So before you begin, think of something that is activating for you. A concert that's coming up, or something you're worried about, or something that's on your mind that happened a while ago, but it's still got a charge. Anything like that. Doesn't have to be a big thing. It's better if it's not, because there's no safe container here that I can give you other than yourself. So something that's a 2 or a 3 rather than a 10, and producing some activation for you. So once you've come to that, I want you to listen to the numbers that I give you. 0 is still a stimulus for constructive thinking. And the numbers 1 through 17 are changing states. So 1 through 4, we're just going to do zeros. 5, we do another 0. 6 is the first one where we bring into our awareness whatever is activating. So it winds up being the even numbers, starting with 6, are going to be, you're going to think about that activating thing, and the odd numbers after 5 and on, will be constructive thinking. 1, 0. 2, 0. 3, 0. 4, 0. 5, 0. 6, 7, 0. 8, 9, 0. 10, 11, 0. 12, 13, 0. 14, 15, 0. 16, 17, 0. 0, 0. And we usually do 17 steps twice. If you've done my other video, 0, 1, 2, it's really very similar to this. It's just observing what our experience is through a thought. Whether we're doing constructive thinking or we're thinking of something else, how that changes our state of being. So those give you some introduction into the thinking behind constructive thinking and Primal Alexander and how I use it in the work that I do with myself, with my students, and with my clients. And it becomes particularly useful when we're integrating thought and the use of the mind into our playing, into our thinking, into our doing, and into our being. So it's part of the equation with the work that we do to heal, to improve, and to reach our full potential.